what Wyn Williams picks up on in his report today is the painfully slow and difficult process of compensation for those victims who have been the most affected here, the ones who suffered the worst, the ones who were sent to jail, who were given criminal records.
Volume 1 of the Post Office Inquiry report says at least 13 postmasters may have taken their own lives after being accused of wrongdoing, based on evidence from the Horizon IT system that the Post Office and developers Fujitsu knew could be false. A further 59 people also told the inquiry they considered ending their lives. Times reporter Tom Witherow has been following the story from the start and was there to hear the findings. Tom, pretty shocking revelations, and presumably this is new information.
I mean, up until today, we were aware of about 5 suicides, each in their own way, incredibly tragic cases. Some of which we've seen in the Times already. In one case, a man who took his own life hours after his post office was raided by post office investigators. One of the new cases, which has been raised in the first volume of the inquiry report today, a man who took his own life after being interviewed in a really harrowing interview by post office investigators. So absolutely terrible stories, and it really gets to the heart of the human impact of this scandal.
Oh, absolutely. And of course that was painted in primary colours in the drama about the personal cost. The chair of the inquiry who wrote the report says it's impossible to ascertain how many people have suffered in total, and criticises the formidable difficulties around compensation for victims. How many people are still waiting for compensation?
So there's about 3,700 who haven't received final compensation. Many of them will have received interim payments to try and clear some of that immediate financial difficulties that they're in. So for some people, that's been paying off debt, ensuring that they can live comfortably, and really relieving abject poverty.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, really, isn't it, that 5-6 years after this scandal was first blown open in the High Court, all the way back in 2019, we had that big judgment that said that the Horizon system was indeed faulty, that there's still people waiting. And the total number of victims who've come forward to try and claim redress is now at close to 11,000.
I mean, it does seem incredible that so much time has elapsed, as you say. Do you think the chair of this inquiry is going to have any sort of action or power to speed up the process?
So Sir Wyn Williams, the retired judge who's chairing the inquiry, has said that the delays have been unacceptable, and he highlighted those cases which there are some people who went to the Court of Appeal to have their convictions quashed in 2020 and they're still going and trying to get that final payment through, and the people we spoke to today, they just want to see this behind them. One person said to me, I want to wake up and not have to think about the post office and the scandal.
Well, and it's dominated their lives, hasn't it, completely?
In terms of trying to break through that, the inquiry chair effectively said it is too late to kind of scrap and redesign these schemes. We're too far down the road, and that would only lead to yet more delays as they bring on new staff and build new structures. So instead, he's set out a number of recommendations to try and kind of break the deadlock. The story of these schemes, and it's true in this one, and it's a lesson that needs to be learned across all of this type of scandals, like the infected blood scandals, is that if you build in too much bureaucracy, too much adversarial legal work, then it just goes on, and it's traumatizing and re-traumatizing for those victims.
I mean, just finally, can we expect Post Office senior management to be named and shamed in the next instalment?
Yeah, so this is volume 1 of the final report of this inquiry. The inquiry's been hearing evidence for 3 years. I think we saw today that they've considered 2.3 million pages of documents, so a huge volume of work. Yeah. This is really just a small slice of the pie, and it's at the end of the year, early next year, we're going to get the main report, which will start to lay out some of the accountability for this scandal. That really will be the kind of major report. It will also allow the police to kind of take the next step in their work. They've said that they will not charge anybody for crimes related to the post office scandal until they've seen Sir Wyn Williams's verdict.
Tom Witherow, thank you very much for bringing us up to date. Reporter on news and special projects at The Times there about the Post Office inquiry.
I'm joined now by Brian Glick, Editor-in-Chief of Computer Weekly, the publication that helped to uncover the scandal. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Hugo.
Thank you for being with us. Look, we knew already of the suffering endured by sub-postmasters, but this really emphasises how devastating the scandal was for victims, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, bringing everything together into this one report, 162-page report. We knew a lot of this already, but to put it all together and to put the narrative around it in the way that Wyn Williams, the public inquiry chair, has done, just really hits you very hard in the face. Just the full scale of this, the number of people that were affected by it, and the mendacity of the post office and everybody involved in causing so much pain to so many thousands of people.
I mean, mendacity is such a good word there, because the report says that post office bosses should have known that the Horizon system was faulty, and pointing out that it's the bosses who should have known, not just the people who were dealing with sort of panicked calls, but going right the way up. People knew the system was not working. Why do you think they carried on the same course, knowing the lives it was ruining, knowing the impact it was having, while also knowing that the problem was their own software?
During the inquiry, you may recall Paula Venables, who was the chief executive of the post office during much of the cover-up of this, concluded her very tearful testimony by reflecting that perhaps she had focused too much on the institution and not enough on the individual. And in that line, therein shows what was going on within the post office at this time. This was all about protecting the post office, protecting the brand, protecting them. They had no consideration for the individuals here. They had no considerations. They could not physically accept the idea that they had made a mistake here, that it was the software that was at fault. I think it's really interesting, the language that Wyn Williams has used in this part of the inquiry, where he says the bosses should have known, because the defense of a lot of the bosses in the inquiry, like Paula Venables, was, I expected my people to tell me if there was a problem. Nobody told me there was a problem. Perhaps, let's hope, perhaps, that the language we're seeing here is perhaps setting us up for what we're going to see in the later reports from the inquiry, where Wyn Williams is going to start to attribute blame.
Yeah, well, I suppose should have known is different from did know, but of course it shouldn't be. Look, what stage are we at, Brian, with the compensation process for sub-postmasters? Because I know there's been some controversy there.
Yeah. If you ask the government, they will say correctly they are paid out now over £1 billion in compensation. But what they've mostly done is paid out compensation to the relatively simple cases. And what Wyn Williams picks up on in his report today is the painfully slow and difficult process of compensation for those victims who have been the most affected here, the ones who suffered the worst, the ones who were sent to jail, who were given criminal records, many of the ones who were featured in the ITV drama that we saw 18 months or so ago, where they are really struggling. They have been putting in claims, they have been getting input from forensic accountants and legal advisors. They'll put in a claim, and then the post office will come back and say, we've considered your claim, we're only going to pay you 15% of what you say. And it ends up in this terrible adversarial process, and if you listen to most of the victims saying, it feels like they're being judged again. It feels like they're having to go through another court case. It feels like they're having to prove to themselves again. Yeah. And the report today is calling on the government to really, address these complex cases. It's calling on the government to come out with a proper program of restorative justice to really put an end to the suffering of all these victims.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long, long way away from what they were promised, isn't it? Look, finally, Brian, how do sub-postmasters feel about this inquiry? Does it have their confidence? Do they think it is doing what needs to be done?
Yes. So far the sub-postmasters have all said they have full confidence in Wyn Williams and in the inquiry. They all inevitably took an incredibly close interest in all the testimony over a nearly 3-year period as that was coming out. They felt that Wyn Williams has got the answers that they wanted. He's got people talking as much as he was probably ever going to get them talking. But obviously, everything is going to come down to the next and final report, which is the one that really looks into the causes of the scandal, and, as I mentioned earlier, hopefully starts to point the finger at people and institutions and attribute blame for what's happened.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. That is Brian Glick, the editor-in-chief of Computer Weekly, which, of course, helped uncover the scandal of the Horizon post office disaster, discussing that there as the inquiry reports for the first time.